Thank you all for clapping for me as I walked in my church. Before I get started this great afternoon, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to welcome you to Life Church and let you know that service is on Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. Good morning. Councilwoman Porter, Shanasia Sauls, Mayor Scott, Speaker Jones, Senate President Ferguson, and Governor Moore, our Lieutenant Governor, and all of the great dignitaries who join us here on this great day. The scripture teaches us that if we have a poor brother or sister, we are to support them as if they were a stranger and a sojourner in our community. This notion of helping the poor is the bedrock of my Christian faith. Today, we support our legislators in helping to create a policy to engage people and help them to discover their purpose. The Enough Act is to combat what the church and faith institutions have fought since the beginning of time, the spirit of hopelessness. I fear that the most dangerous person on the planet is not an ignorant person, nor an apathetic person, but a person who is without hope. This hopelessness has shifted our communities from Brooklyn to Belvedere, from Curtis Bay to Calhoun Street, from the city of refuge to a city of rage. And consequently, oppressed people have become silent and accepting their own victimization. In the book Black Suffering, my former professor, Dr. James Henry Harris, speaks about the silence of oppressed people. And when one has been sentenced to silence, one fears the freedom of speech can only be experienced by those who grant the prisoner parole. Today, communities across this great city and in Brooklyn can break their silence with the Enough Act. We have been heard. Enough with struggling schools, enough with antiquated strategies, enough with violence being the voice of our community, enough with being the victim of our own circumstances. Today, we redefine enough. With this statement, I am enough, you and I get the opportunity to change, convince, confirm, and champion a new world. It can and it will work. Beloved, we serve a God who is more than enough. Today, we walk into new legislative life with better health care, with help, and the opportunity to heal and improve our world. I can hear those words from one of the greatest musicals ever created called The Wiz, where they conclude with that great song, "Can you hear a brand new day?" I hear it. Well, beloved, it is here. We have prayed for, believed for, and wished for an act that focuses on the least, the left out, and the looked over. Now, the other speakers will address the nuts and bolts this morning, but what stuck out to me with this historic legislation, this great opportunity, was the word opportunity. That is right. Those living on the margins will no longer feel minimal. It will help those move from the margins to the middle. In closing, I like to end with stories. This week, I had the opportunity to take my daughter to Memphis, Tennessee. She auditioned for the International Association of Black Dancers. And while traveling to Baltimore, Washington International Airport, my daughter started to cry. I looked at her and asked her, "Allie, why are you crying?" I thought she was crying because she would spend the next few days with her dad. Maybe she had a thought that maybe was beyond my notion. She says, "No, Dad, I'm not crying because I'm sad. I'm not crying because I'm upset. I'm not crying even because I'm mad. These tears that I have are tears of joy. I said, Allie, are you a preacher? She says, no, Dad, I'm not a preacher. But these tears that I have are tears of joy because it just dawned on me. I had the opportunity to audition. I said, what an amazing preaching moment. My daughter, who has the best of both worlds, she lives a life that gives her the opportunity to have opportunities when she was able to now see that all opportunities are not equal and everyone does not have the opportunity that she has and afford the opportunity to move forward. Beloved, I want to encourage you this morning to really take it in, to inhale, to breathe, that those of us who sit in this room, in this sanctuary on this day, who has been granted and given opportunities to become whatever you so dreamed and desired to be, that there are other brothers and sisters that live in our community that don't have those opportunities. And today, you and I get the opportunity to help others have an opportunity to fulfill their God-given right, to reach their full potential, and to hopefully to develop their purpose. Well, I'm a Men Flowers, and I approve this message. I'm now going to turn over the microphone to the great leader of District 10, Councilwoman Felicia Porter.
Wow, how do you follow that? I want to first start out by saying, as legislators, we get tens of hundreds of emails, sometimes tens of thousands of emails every single day that come into our inbox about resources needed for different families, about the violence that is erupting within our communities, about food deserts, people having enough to eat every single day. And I just want you all to really understand the moment, the historic legacy moment of where we are in this time. The Enough Act provides us, and legislators, I'm gonna make some, I'm gonna go off script a little bit. It provides us with the political will and the political action to make meaningful changes, not only within our policy, but within our people that serve you all every single day. It allows us, it provides a very clear direction to make sure that we are not only prioritizing the people that live in this community, but all across the state of Maryland that are hurting, that are living every single day in concentrated poverty, that are living in inequities of food deserts, transit deserts, working multiple jobs in order just to survive. This is an opportunity for us to thrive. This is an opportunity for our government in the state of Maryland and the city of Baltimore to reimagine how we do business and how we do government. We all took an oath when we came into this office about serving and being of service to our communities. When we have the necessary tools and the political will and action to make meaningful change in our communities so that we don't have the senseless violence, we don't have communities, 13 communities in District 10 living in a food desert, 2 bus lines in District 10 to get to and from Maine, Baltimore City. We are reimagining how we do business and how we allocate resources to our most vulnerable people that are living day in and day out, that may or may not know who their local representative is, who their state representative is. This is a time where we are reimagining and we're reframing how we do government. And I charge you all today as we really celebrate the Enough Act. And Governor Moore, I am incredibly grateful that you listened and you provided action. As we go forward today with the Enough Act, it is not enough for us to just be here at a press conference. We have to go back to our agencies and really create meaningful change and actual action, because we have communities all across the state of Maryland whose lives depend on our stroke of a pen, our yes and no of a vote, and our attentiveness to how we do government and business as usual. So I thank you all for being here today. I'm so grateful that we have an opportunity to really undergird and feel what this Enough Act will be for the entire state of Maryland. So thank you. And now I have the distinct honor of introducing Dr. Sauls from the Baltimore Community Foundation.
This is the intermission. I get to speak in between those who do it professionally. So thank you, Governor Moore, the Moore-Miller administration, Senate President Bill Ferguson, Madam Speaker Adrienne Jones, Mayor Scott, and the collection of elected, civic, and appointed leaders for your vision and your advocacy on behalf of the children of Baltimore City and children across the state of Maryland. Bishop, thank you for your hospitality. Councilwoman, thank you for welcoming me into your home and for your sense of purpose. The Baltimore Community Foundation is here today for the reason that many of you are also here. We believe that our individual contributions can be multiplied by greater impact when we act as a part of a community. BCF's vision is that Baltimore boasts a growing economy where all have the opportunity to thrive. Opportunity and thrive are themes today. BCF is committed to working in partnership to help build cleaner, safer, greener, and more vibrant communities, as well as stronger schools to ensure that our neighborhood's most vital resource, its young people, can grow and seek success. When there are structures and a willingness to improve communication and coordination among effective grassroots, nonprofit organizations, and public agencies, together with communities and families as partners and contributors, we can provide those opportunities that move the needle. Our grassroots organizations are credible partners who have on-the-ground, real-time knowledge and can get to those nooks and crannies that many of us can't even know exist. Our institutions and community anchors, like our schools, our churches, our libraries, have the stability and often the infrastructure to deliver at scale. Philanthropy, we have the risk capital. We have the influence and we have the missions to do well by doing good in the places where our wealth was built and on the issues that are meaningful to our respective versions of social impact. And the public sector. You have the strength of the public authority and the ability to create and resource the paths and speed of delivery at the population level. But none of us can do the good work by ourselves. So today, state, local leadership are taking an important step forward to align these partners with best practices to give our children what they need and deserve in the places that rear them. So what could something like the Enough Act mean, for example, for children here in Brooklyn who are still dealing? And I'll just let that, they're dealing. But what could that act do for those working at the intersection of schools and neighborhoods to imagine new possibilities and opportunities? The Enough Act builds the social capital, political will, ideas, credibility, capacity, scale to move us closer to a vision. And we at the Baltimore Community Foundation, and so many of us in philanthropy, are delighted and honored to be here and to support its intent and its realization in partnership with you under your leadership. So on behalf of the Baltimore Community Foundation, I thank you again for taking this important step forward. And now I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming the mayor of the great city of Baltimore, Brandon Scott.
Good morning. Good morning. That's about right this morning. We all should be a little in mourning. I know we're all still in disbelief. This is Blue Monday, Mr. Governor, and we no longer call it the Super Bowl. It's the Usher concert in Las Vegas. So now that we have that out the way, we'll power on today because today's announcement is far too important to be overshadowed by anything. Pastor, thank you for allowing me back here to Life. I love this church so much because it's a church we often hear about churches that are in communities, but I always say that this church and many others here in Brooklyn are really of the community. You can come here on a Saturday morning or a Saturday evening. I feel like I've been to birthday parties, community meetings. We might have watched a movie here. Everything happens here, and that's how we want our religious institutions to be in our community. So thank you very much. For most of our city's history, as you all know, communities just like the one we're in today in Brooklyn have been neglected, ignored, disinvested in, and far too often that disinvestment was done intentionally. It happened here in South Baltimore. It happened in Park Heights, where I grew up, and it happened all across East and West Baltimore. That intentional disinvestment, let's be very clear, has been the underpinning of so many challenges facing our city for decades. And changing it is one of the very reasons I got into public service in the first place. Because when you live in a neighborhood that is the center of the world for a horse race, but every other day of the year you're not even treated as human, it has a direct impact on you. Mr. Governor, I've always been very crystal clear that I am no different than many of those who I grew up with, some who are no longer here, some who are struggling with addiction, and some who, like me, quote unquote, made it out. The opportunities I was afforded in my life, be it going to Roland Park Middle, Mr. President, and not Green Spring Middle, seeing the country with the mighty Mervo track team, but most importantly, it was the life provided for me by my hard-working parents and grandparents. My mom, a union worker, my granddad, a union worker, my dad working for the family business. That opportunity for us to live in just a little bit better than the folks living next door to me meant everything for me and my brothers. And since the day I entered office, not just as mayor, but as a councilman, I have said that the overarching time for me in public office and of my administration as mayor is to start to overcome those decades of disinvestment so that many of Baltimore's neighborhoods that have endured that neglect for so long were finally seen and invested in. And we are making progress in that in every single way. Progress, as you know, Mr. Governor, on improving public safety the right way, as we are continuing to see violence in the city drop. Progress on ensuring that we are tackling, thank you, Mr. Secretary, the vacant housing crisis in Baltimore City in a very big way. Thank you, Mr. Governor. Progress on ensuring that new developments and new investment that is poured into our city doesn't just happen in the communities that touch the water, but happens all around the city for everyone to benefit from it. And progress in providing better opportunities for our most precious resource, Dr. Sauls, our young people, no matter their circumstances. But we've always known that in order to fully tackle this effort of overcoming this historic disinvestment, we need to work together. We need to utilize every tool available to all of us, and we need to all share the same goal. I knew the moment that they declared victory for Governor Moore and his administration that we finally have the type of partner in Annapolis that so many Baltimoreans have been waiting a lifetime for. And he has proved us right time and time again, so thank you, Mr. Governor. Today's announcement and the partnership you see at every level, from the governor to the fabulous Senate President to the Speaker of the House, who I'll introduce, our Councilwoman, our Lieutenant Governor, my counterparts, the county executives from Baltimore County and Anne Arundel County, that shows the willingness of all of us wanting to work towards this goal together. And it shows that the state of Maryland is willing to make the investments and the policy changes to truly see it through, to enact some real change through the Enough Act. I want to thank the governor and his administration for taking the lead on crafting this first of kind legislative initiative at the state level. I am honored to stand here today with all of these partners in supporting this monumental piece of legislation that will help us tackle the root causes of poverty and usher in a new era for Marylanders and particularly Baltimoreans all across the great city. But I'm even more proud to get ready to do the tough work, because the real work begins after the legislation. Thank you very much, everyone. And with that, I have the high and distinct honor of introducing the best Speaker of the House in these United States of America, Madam Speaker Adrienne Jones.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Over the past month, you probably heard me talk a lot about decency. I'm saying that because I'm not going to be talking about the Enough Act, because I want to save it for the main person that you here to see. I've been focused on this because we recently seen our political disagreements literally pull us apart. We've seen it in our communities, in our friendships, and in our families. As the divides between us grow, we've seen a rise in threats in our democracy, increased prejudice in our communities, and attacks on equity and inclusion. So this session, I am working to strengthen the basic values of decency and empathy that should guide our state and our society. Specifically, this effort would put safeguards and best practices in place to prevent intolerance and hate from taking further root in our state's institutions and schools. It seems like every day across our state, our worst instincts drive more and more of the conversation. As our civic divides have grown, we have lost sight of the shared values that should support our communities. We've forgotten how to talk to each other. We've forgotten how to listen to each other. We've forgotten how to see those who have been overlooked. I want us to get these values back. I want us to remember our social responsibility to protect the most vulnerable in our communities. I want us to help communities talk to each other about what they need, to help them invest in anchor institutions, and to help lift themselves up. This work is at the heart of Governor Moore's Enough Act. The community conversations, investments, and supports it could foster reinforces the values of decency and compassion. We need to create thriving communities across the state. To be clear, I am not asking for Marylanders who believe in what I believe in or compromise their values. We know that we'll never agree on everything, and we shouldn't. But our disagreements don't have to tear our communities down. I'm simply asking us all to show a little bit more decency, a little bit more respect, and a little bit more patience for the beliefs and the identities of our fellow Marylanders. In doing so, we can help our most vulnerable, our children, schools, and businesses live and coexist in strong and supportive communities. Thank you, and now let me turn it over to my partner in the Maryland General Assembly, Senate President Bill Ferguson.
Good afternoon. Look at this room. This is one heck of a room, Mr. Governor. This is what change looks like. This is a pretty special moment from our county executives, our close neighbors, and actually on behalf of, I get the joy of having two roles here today. Of course, representing the Senate of Maryland, but most importantly, being the senator from the 46th Legislative District with my colleagues. I see Delegate Mark Edelson, Chairman Luke Clippinger, and Delegate Robin Lewis, I know, are here as well. And we welcome you to the 46th District and welcome you to Brooklyn. Thank you, Pastor Flowers, for doing such an amazing opening, and for the other speakers who really set the table the right way about what today is about. And before I get to that key point, I want to harken back actually about 16 years ago when I was a law student at Maryland after having taught at Southwestern High School, which was just down the road here. And I was in the Community Justice Clinic. And so we were working in communities, and particularly in South Baltimore, to work on vacant housing. And so we were charged, two of us in our law clinic, to tackle 2 vacant homes just across the Hanover Street Bridge in Cherry Hill. And we spent 7 months filing briefs, moving things forward, finding the right nonprofit, to finally feel so excited that we were able to turn over this vacant property that had been holding down a neighborhood block where kids were having to walk past it every day and see the challenge that is vacant homes. And we were so thrilled to get this home into productive hands. And then I remembered thinking, we just worked for 7 months for 2 vacant homes. And I thought to myself, when I think about the students that I was teaching at Southwestern, these 9th, 10th, and 11th graders, my biggest takeaway from teaching, amongst many, was that at the time, these 14, 15, and 16-year-olds were facing things that were harder every single day getting to and from school than what I had ever experienced in my life to that point. And I started to realize, especially in elected offices, that we very often think about, well, we just have to fix education, or we just have to fix housing, or maybe if we could just get with healthcare, and if we could just deal with climate and the environment. Like, we'll turn the corner once we do that. Well, there's a truth. It all works together. Every single piece matters. And when we think about amazing communities here in South Baltimore and the incredible workers, I see Ken Lane over there, who has been doing amazing, amazing work with Youth Resiliency Institute, with Cherry Hill Strong, with a number of community partners that are here today. Here's the good news. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Communities know what they want. They know what they need. And so why we're here today and why the Enough Act is so important and why we've seen it work in other places like Eastlake, or in Cincinnati, in places across the country, it's about focused, collaborative effort, not just by government, but with philanthropic partners, with the private sector, with agencies who have a dedicated focus, collaborating on a dedicated space. That is how you make change. And the good news is there's proof it works. So for those of you in the room today, after we pass this legislation, of course, we got a lot of work to do. This is the right step. But as I've said to the governor many times over this last year, when I step back and think, what do I really care about now? As I think back as a former teacher, as a law student working, what do I really think right now? It's that we in Maryland, we in South Baltimore, we're building again, and we're building together. And without further ado, I want to hand it over to my friend and colleague, our partner in this work, Governor Wes Moore.
Thank you all. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. And Pastor, I want to say, Pastor Flowers, I want to say thank you. Thank you for having us here. Thank you for hosting us here. I see my pastor over in the corner, so I hope you don't mind me saying today is the day that the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. This is a powerful day. And I want to start, President Ferguson, it's not just a joy to have you as a friend and a partner in this work, but also a real thought partner and a leader. And I'm grateful for not just the introduction, but I'm grateful for the fact that your leadership is a big reason why we are here today. Just to be able to share this stage with people who I don't just respect and admire, but I will follow anywhere. Speaker Jones, another person, just so grateful for all you continue to do for each and every one of us. Our fantastic mayor, Mayor Scott, just thank you and bless you. And you're right, progress is happening. I think about the work of Dr. Shanesha Sauls, who I've known now for decades. And I continue to be proud of you, my friend, and everything you continue to do. And Councilwoman Porter, who I think about what it means to show a level of nonstop commitment and devotion to a community, and that's you. And that's what you just continue to do. And, every so often, my phone rings in the middle of the night. And the one thing I've come to learn is that when my phone rings in the middle of the night, it's never good news. And about 7 months ago, I got one of those calls. And I got a call from Mayor Scott. And Mayor Scott told me that there was a mass shooting in Brooklyn. And immediately, we identified what the community needed in both the short and the long term. Immediately, we mobilized agencies and coordinated law enforcement so Marylanders could get the support that they needed. Immediately, I knew that Mayor Scott, nor I, nor so many people who were the first responders, their getting sleep that night was done. And that night, while we focused on the tragedy that stood in front of us, in the days and the months after, I was enabled to shake a much deeper and a much more enduring tragedy that was taking place in this community. Because in Maryland statewide, the median household income is $98,000. In Brooklyn, the median income is $35,000. In Maryland statewide, about 1 in 10 students will not finish high school. In Brooklyn, 1 in 3 students will not finish high school. In Maryland statewide, about 1 in 8 children are living in poverty. In Brooklyn, about 1 in 2 children are living in poverty. And the reality is that we've seen these numbers consistent in Brooklyn for well over a decade. These statistics, these trends, they tell a story. And they tell a story that this community has gone unseen. This community has gone unheard. This community has gone underestimated. It's a story that we keep witnessing all over our state, from Mountain, Maryland, all the way to the Eastern Shore and everywhere in between. It's a story that repeats itself, that if you were born into poverty, chances are you will die in poverty. So we owe it to our people to disrupt these patterns that drive pain, that drive hardship, and that drive tragedy. We owe it to our state to unlock the promise of our communities. And so today, we stand here, this remarkable room of public servants and leaders. We stand here and we do say enough. Enough of wasted potential, enough of cycles of crime, enough of lost opportunities. And I'm honored to stand with our partners in government and community to unveil the Enough Act. This bill, which the Moore-Miller administration and Madam Lieutenant Governor, I'm so proud and thankful to be your partner inside this work. This bill continues the frontal assault on child poverty that we launched on our inauguration day. And this bill will be the first of its kind in the nation coming from a state. Enough will channel targeted private, philanthropic, and state resources towards communities across our states with high rates of generational child poverty. And instead of just freely spreading money around, we're going to target the places that are most in need of our help and also place the right accountability around that capital. And we're going to do it in a way that follows local and national best practices. For years, leaders in the private sector and philanthropic community have been driving change by focusing on places and people, and it's time now for government to catch up. It's time now for state government to be able to put a place-based focus on the way that we do our work too. Because you see, this legislation is not just about a renewed focus on poverty. This legislation represents a new way of governing. We believe in following the data. We believe in efficient and effective investments. And most importantly, we believe that the people who are closest to the problems are the ones closest to the solutions. We just need to make sure that they're at the table. Government can provide resources and expertise and collaboration, but to truly address challenges like poverty, you need to recruit the people who are already on the ground. We need to recruit people like Pastor Flowers, who's a pillar of the community. We need to recruit community organizations that are doing the work. The people who've been fighting these fights for their whole lives, they know their neighborhoods, they know their communities, and we desperately need your help to make sure that we can get it right. Because every community is unique, and every community faces unique challenges. Maybe in your community, there's no job training where you live. Maybe in your community, there's no transportation. Maybe in your community that the nearest healthcare provider is actually across state lines. Maybe in your community, it's not safe for kids to play after school. Maybe in your community, local entrepreneurs aren't able to access the capital that can help them to grow their businesses. Maybe in your community, the answer is just yes. It's all of it. When it comes to communities struggling with poverty, there are likely many problems that need to be addressed all at once, and our village elders know what those problems are and how to fix them. And so that's why this legislation calls on community leaders to come together and create comprehensive plans on how to make their neighborhoods better. The premise of the Enough Act is simple. Leaders in our communities will provide the vision. The state will provide the support, and not the other way around. We will fund winning proposals with a mix of public and private money. We will build partnerships with communities so they can benefit from the muscle and the coordination of government, and we will do so through the Governor's Office for Children, led by the spectacular leadership of Carmel Martin. And I want to be clear. We aren't asking neighborhoods to craft proposals by themselves. We've laid out clear guidelines and guidance for the kinds of priorities that we want these proposals to include. And that means we want to create safe and thriving communities in urban, rural, and suburban parts of our state. We want to support healthy and economically secure families in urban, rural, and suburban parts of our state. We want to ensure access to high-quality education and high-quality health care for our children, from cradle to career in urban, rural, and suburban parts of our state. The proposals we're asking for will give us a roadmap for elevating our communities that's written by our communities and not simply for them. We will lean on these roadmaps to guide our work and hopefully guide the work of others in state government as well. And we're going to learn about our neighborhoods through this initiative, because the more we learn, the better we can strategize. Because history tells us that money means little without strategy. Let's not forget the 1990s. Tens of millions of dollars from philanthropy flooded into Sandtown, Winchester to revitalize a community. 2 decades later, Freddie Gray was arrested in that neighborhood and killed in police custody, and after his death, millions more went into Sandtown, Winchester. What's the result? Today, the poverty rate in Sandtown, Winchester is more than double the state average. Decades later. Money is important. Strategy is imperative. We need to spend smarter. We need to spend wiser across state programs in a way that follows the data and responds to the needs of the community, and that's exactly what the Enough Act is all about. Together, we will help transform distressed communities into places with top schools and good jobs and safe communities and quality housing and economic momentum. That's the future that we're trying to build. That's the future that our communities deserve. And we're going to build it in partnership with each and every one of you. And that includes our 2 presiding officers. And I have to tell you how much it means to all of us that not just that you're here, and not just your full-throated support for this piece of legislation, but for the leadership you continue to show. And I'm grateful to have both of you as partners inside this work. Their presence sends a message that fighting child poverty is not just the priority of the Moore-Miller administration. Fighting child poverty is the aspiration of our entire state. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. But today, we take a big step forward. And we believe the positive effects of this legislation will ripple out across every single corner of our state. That the community partnerships that apply to join this initiative will lead our battle to end child poverty statewide. They'll test and prove new approaches that we can spread. And by lifting more Marylanders out of poverty, we will build a more competitive Maryland for everybody. You know, when I was at Robin Hood, one of the largest poverty-fighting organizations in this country, and I see my former colleague, Fritz Bondo, is now at the Harlem Children's Zone. It's great to see, man. I remember people would say to us that, you know, poverty is a choice. And I remember what I'd say in response: you're right. Poverty is a choice. But it's not the choice of the person who wakes up in the morning with the weight of poverty on their shoulders. It's society's choice. It's a legislative choice. It's a policy choice. In many cases, we're talking about places that have been the victims of not just generational poverty, but the victims of also creative policies that have created the generational poverty, like redlining and unfair appraisal values. There is a measure, and Mr. Mayor, you said it best, there is a measure of intentionality that drives concentrated poverty. So there needs to be a measure of intentionality about the way that we're going to address it. And that's why we continue to name poverty as a challenge and one that we will defeat. Enough will be the rallying cry, not just here in Baltimore, but across the state of Maryland, that we have had enough with poverty. We've had enough with crime. We've had enough with a system where generational challenges go unaddressed. We've had enough where we continue to put policies in place and get the same results and never change our political framework. Today, we say we have had enough with the same neighborhoods facing the same issues and coming up with the same solutions. Now is the time to invest enough. Now is the time to do enough. Now is the time to partner enough. Enough. Engaging neighborhoods, organizations, unions, governments, and households. That's what enough stands for. And it's more than an acronym. It's our new governing philosophy. With that philosophy in our minds and hearts, we will work together. We will build a state that leaves no one behind. And we are going to make this moment matter. We're proud of today, but we're grateful for tomorrow. And we're ready to get to work. Thank you all so much. Thanks for all your time.